Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 8th combined meeting of the Pine-Richland School District. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Ms. Williams.
Mr. Hines?
Here.
Ms. Back?
Here.
Mr. Shawnee?
Here.
Dr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Toledo?
Here.
Dr. Halen?
Here.
Dr. Meyer?
Here.
Mr. Moy?
Here.
Mrs. Swift?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. As has been our custom, we'll move to an educational model update from the administration prior to our first recognition of visitors.
Thank you. Okay, tonight's update will be sent via podcast tomorrow to students, staff, and families. For communication during COVID, we're using this strategy for our comprehensive updates to ensure a consistent message. The weekly e-blasts that are sent on Fridays are specifically designed to be concise. They focus on updated conditions in the county and cases for students and staff in our schools. An archive of all of this information is available on the website. As a special note, I wanted to say that good news messages, stories about things that are happening in our schools, those are shared in other types of communication, and they're largely building driven. We're keeping those messages separate from our public health and educational model updates. Tonight's agenda is similar to recent updates, but we're also including some responses and information to frequently asked questions that emerge within the community. From the moment this model was designed, it was designed to be dynamic. And we have learned so much in the past year about COVID-19 and education. So at this point, we can see the green starburst H, the hybrid. It has shifted a little bit on the left as conditions continue to improve. We see that the virtual cloud for all in the upper right-hand corner is just a little bit smaller. And again, we see that hybrid as being bigger and stronger based upon the conditions. That could change at a building level, and we'll address some of that later in the presentation. But one of the significant questions continues to be, when can we move to 5 days of in-person instruction at all levels? So tonight, we have sort of a red dot in the middle of that continuum to sort of symbolize this is the direction that we get questions regarding this. This is a topic of discussion that occurs within the community, within our schools, within our committees, with public health agencies. This is the same question we were talking about in October of 2020, based upon the conditions at that time. And that was at a time when the incidence rate per 100,000 was in the 30s or 40s out of 100,000. It was a time when the PCR percentage positive tests were around 5%. And so a lot has changed in that time, including our understanding. But this is not a new question, and it's not a question that's not part of this dynamic model. So we'll address, again, some of those points tonight. We've mentioned this, and it's really important to understand the iterative nature of this process. In the PDF version of this presentation and podcast, you'll see links to articles, recent articles by the CDC and the Journal of American Medical Association. These articles talk about exactly the type of mitigation efforts that are in place at Pine-Richland School District. But the point of the slide is that we continue to learn. One of the biggest challenges facing all of us in schools is some of the soundbite type information or headline information that gets disseminated by various sources. So for example, there's a message circulating from Allegheny County regarding the fact that there's little evidence of transmission of COVID-19 within the school setting and encouraging in-person learning. And that's absolutely true. That is accurate information. But what that type of soundbite information does not convey is that with that recommendation comes the mitigation strategies that help promote safety and public health within the school setting. And so unfortunately that's missing, And when people only hear part of the headline or part of the soundbite without understanding the very strategies that are being recommended, unfortunately, it can lead to some confusion. I meet weekly with the 42 superintendents in Allegheny County, members of the Allegheny Intermediate Unit, and also Allegheny County Health Department. So Dr. Brink, who is the chief epidemiologist, and Dr. Bogan, who is the director, one or both of them are on those weekly calls as we talk about conditions in the county, cases in schools, and recommendations for best practices within the educational environment. Both of those ladies are, again, feeling positive about the direction of conditions, but they also continue to encourage those mitigation strategies that we have in place, such as the face coverings, physical distancing, and all of the other details. At Pine-Richland, we also have continued to meet with our Healthcare Leadership Council. So these are 43 members of our community, key partners that include 12 medical and public health experts. This group has met 12 times since June of 2020. And each and every time, as new information is learned, as new information is released, whether it's through the CDC or Allegheny County Health Department or Pennsylvania, it is reviewed through the lens of the experts on this committee and considered within the context of feedback of those various groups. And so questions such as, when is it appropriate to consider 5 days of in-person instruction? What mitigation strategies should be in place? When should we consider things like moving closer than 6 feet of physical distancing within a school environment? Those are all questions posed to and discussed with the experts on this group, in addition to the agencies that I've talked about already. And so we are very fortunate to have this level of commitment, and this is a group of experts and participants who continue to support where we are at this time based on the conditions. I wanted to take a moment to reinforce something that is incredibly important to us, and that is we are listening. We listen to feedback from students, parents, from our staff members. We actively solicit that feedback. We have given a number of surveys over the past 12 months designed to look at things such as overall satisfaction, communication that's happening at the district and building levels. Is the curriculum pacing appropriate given the models of instruction? Are we balancing the type of learning environment, like synchronous and asynchronous, effectively? Do students feel connected to other students or to staff members within the schools? And questions about wellness. These are all part of intentional design that have been administered multiple times over the last, again, 12 months in order to listen to the feedback and help determine action to improve what we're doing. In addition to that, we have a number of focus groups that allow two-way communication so we can dig into certain concepts and feelings and ideas and gather feedback to help us. One of the things that we know, we all feel, is that incredible tension, fatigue that's associated with the pandemic. It is a tough situation for so many reasons. But as we work through this process together with the community, we are listening. And one of the things we know for sure is that one size does not fit all. There is not a solution or an approach that has only advantages without disadvantage. I mean, that's a reality. Any decision, any movement for different ways across a continuum lead to someone who may feel better or a better fit with an approach, and someone who may not. And so as a team and as an organization, we continue to evaluate decisions on that dynamic continuum against those three key drivers of health and safety, learning effectiveness, and flexibility. Briefly on the data, again, a positive view of what the county looks like, and Pine-Richland School District and schools in general mirror the community and society at large. And so we are seeing that when we get into the slide specifically around Pine-Richland students and staff. But you can see, I mentioned before, October 5th, that's when we were discussing, when is it appropriate to move left on the continuum. and you see where the overall number of cases was in October. We see where they are in February. Again, we have learned a heck of a lot over the last 12 months. But again, this gives a picture of where we are, and we're very pleased that things are moving in the right direction. Since late December, we have shared in our weekly e-blast this holistic dashboard. This is built on the CDC's indicators, core and secondary indicators, which are recommendations for schools to consider as they determine their instructional model. And so it's important to note, people, again, it's back to that idea of sound bites. Someone may hear something, but when it comes to what the CDC recommends relative to schools, this is taken from the CDC indicators. And so we see the first two relate back to incidence rate and PCR positivity. And that's important to understand because they reflect the conditions. And it's good to see that the colors are changing and the levels are reducing in terms of conditions and the amount of virus that's in the community. There are a number of other core mitigation strategies, and these are the details that are really important that separate one school's approach from another school's approach. These are the details that it's very difficult to discern in just looking at a number or hearing a headline. So the 5 first most critical mitigation strategies are listed here, things that we've heard 1,000 times in the last year. Consistent correct use of masks, so physical distancing to the largest extent possible with the CDC recommendation of 6 feet, hand hygiene, sanitation, and again, contact tracing. We have been in touch with Allegheny County Health Department probably 150 times, and that's because in certain cases we've had more than one case within a family or within a situation over the last 5 months. And that level of communication and the efficiency with which we are able to conduct contact tracing is due to that relationship, the county's commitment to schools, and the specific details of the Pine-Richland model. Most of the time in these podcasts, I quickly move through this because it's sent out weekly, but I do want to focus on a couple of these ideas. So other aspects of decision making. At the younger levels, the ability to cohort students, to keep students together with the same set of students, is able to happen more as a function of the schedule design and how schools operate. As students get older and they change different courses, different teachers, and move more freely through a more individualized schedule within the schools, there's less cohorting. So that's why you see the yellow in 7 through 12. But all of these other areas, from shared objects to how we manage visitors to ventilation, physical barriers, cafeterias, transportation, all of these areas are specifically part of our health and safety plan, are thoughtfully considered, and they're implemented with discipline. And this is something, again, that we take a lot of pride in, and it takes a daily discipline and commitment to focus in these areas. And then the last set of data relate to what is the healthcare capacity. And again, positive news in Western Pennsylvania. We have many and large healthcare systems that are available to support our community, and we're seeing, again, improving numbers in healthcare capacity based on the CDC thresholds and color coding. So here are the numbers for Pine-Richland. Again, we now communicate these numbers weekly. We still do not do a daily COVID tracker, but we believe through our weekly communications, people understand, can monitor, see changes that are happening over time, and we again see the breakout by buildings and broken down by students and staff as well. In our last update, we focused more on this new slide, and so again, just to reiterate what this means. So this is for all public school districts in Pennsylvania, and that is to count the number of eligible cases that emerge in a school among students or staff, and there are certain criteria that need to be met, over a rolling 14-day period. So we can see that our current 14-day period exists at the high school, middle school, and Eaton Hall. You can see the total number of cases within that date range, and on the right-hand column, what we describe as a potential action threshold. If you recall, there is a range associated with the potential need to close this building for short duration. We identified the top of that range based upon the strength of mitigation in our district. This is important. There are some schools that use the lower number in the range based upon their approach to mitigation. And what that means is a higher likelihood of needing to close a school, which then has an impact on continuity and stability of the routine. So this changes in a 14-day rolling window as a new case might be added or as a case leaves that 14-day window. So this is a moving kind of number as our time passes and the 14-day window continues to travel. Each and every aspect of our school program is a part of our evaluation of the effectiveness of learning. So when we think about our Pine-Richland model, it is a dynamic model based upon the conditions and cases, but we're thinking about it not just from an academic standpoint, but also from a social and emotional and physical standpoint. Again, taking daily effort to monitor programs. So every aspect of what our board and community has heard about, MTSS, for example, our multi-tiered system of support, which has research-based interventions that are tied to feedback discussions that occur in schools to deliver specific programming to students who need it. We're delivering all of those models, whether a student is in person, whether a student is at home, or whether a student is involved in an alternating day program. So we're delivering all of those research-based interventions. We're providing differentiation. We're providing the special supports. That happened immediately after the March 13th closure, and it has only improved as we've gone into this year and continued to work through this. That model cannot work for everyone the same. And so we know that there are some students who are thriving and there are some students who are struggling. And this is a partnership that when students are struggling for any reason, academic, social, and emotional, we want to have a two-way dialogue, a communication with families. We want to understand, feel, hear, see, and the best way to support that is on an individual basis with those families and the teacher and the student, and finding what works and finding a way to continue to progress through this time. So again, in addition to encouraging parents or others to reach out to us, we are proactively and continue to reach out to families if we identify areas of concern, again, not just academically, but socially and emotionally as well. So the Pine-Richland model aligned to CDC recommendations, and that increases the likelihood of continuity. And so what's noted in red here are really important understandings. Again, because this is the headline soundbite kind of a thing. You don't often hear about large quarantines where there are places where hundreds of students or staff at a time may be quarantined for a period of 14 days based upon physical distancing or other mitigation choices made by those districts. That has a significant impact on continuity and routine within learning. And so as we've considered our key drivers and how do we address those, that's part of it. The other part is the individual school building closures. So it's usually not a district based on that rolling 14-day. It would be a building or buildings within a school. And again, that closure could be anything from a day to two to more, depending upon the circumstances. But for us, having a model that provides stability and continuity and prevents these challenges, we think is really important to educational effectiveness. And in a prior slide deck, not this one, we had the ping pong table example. You know, some movement back and forth is likely necessary, but the degree to which we can prevent that or minimize that is ultimately helpful for the learning process. And so again, the Healthcare Leadership Council is an important part of that, they also provide recommendations. Mrs. Misbach is an example of a board member, a part of that council, and can speak later if she would like to how that operates and what type of feedback is provided. We do not often include pictures in these updates, and I mentioned something as a special note at the beginning, but one of the things that we get the opportunity to see, the board has had the opportunity to visit and see the model in action. So students are incredibly resilient. That doesn't mean that students aren't struggling. They are. It doesn't mean that staff members aren't struggling. They are. It doesn't mean that parents and families aren't struggling. They are, because this is a challenging time for everybody. But what we see in our schools, what we feel in our schools, is students who get used to the routine, form relationships. They're different. They're different when masked. It feels a little different, but it also feels positive, and we see those signs of engagement. Upper left, we see an example of an Eden Hall classroom with students physically distanced. In the middle upper section, we see a teacher who is delivering virtual-only instruction to all of her students from her classroom in the school and has rearranged her work environment in order to facilitate that kind of instruction. On the upper right, we see an example of a cafeteria at the elementary level where physical distancing between students is important. And these are important things to think about, because the decision for when to move along a continuum does not just impact the classroom, it impacts transportation, it impacts the hallway, it impacts the cafeteria. It has connections to so many aspects of what happens in school. Bottom left is a computer science class at the high school. Middle bottom is an example of how the library, because that's a shared space, we are delivering the library to classrooms instead of having a large number of students rotate through the library, as just an example of what mitigation looks like in a school setting. And we're certainly familiar with our marching band and their ability to continue to perform and participate, as we have been able to do so for athletics, with some restrictions and regulations as well. Mental health is a part of that holistic look at children. And so this is something that is top of mind for us, not just today, not just this year, not just during the period of the global pandemic, but this has been a part of our focus as a school district for years and years and years. As an example, when we receive survey feedback that says students aren't feeling as connected to their classmates as they would like, or as connected to their teacher as they would like to feel, some of that is tied to the circumstance. But there are things we can do, actions we can take, practices we can begin to utilize to be more effective in strengthening those relationships for students who are not feeling that level of support. And so at our January in-service, there was a half-day focus specifically on strategies to effectively strengthen relationships, student to student, teacher to student, within our school settings, and best practices shared that are working in classrooms in the district. If there are specific concerns around mental health that any member of our staff or student body or community or parent group have for a child, please reach out to us immediately. Please share with a member of the school. It could be the counselor or the school principal. We will immediately engage our team to provide supports for families, whether we do that ourselves or whether we continue to access other services like school-based mental health or referrals to outside agencies. Whatever we need to do, we will do, and we will do quickly, because this is what we do. We do it now. We will do it in the future, and we certainly had that same focus prior to COVID. Specifically with suicide awareness and prevention, the third bullet on this slide talks about the stoplight model that has been embedded in the way we operate. This is what we communicate to students through curriculum. This is what we share with staff through training. And that stoplight model for suicide awareness and prevention, green focuses on resiliency, and resiliency specifically around protective factors. Each of us whether we're 10 years old or whether we're 50 years old, have protective factors. Those things that reside within us that can be strengthened, and those things that are around us, outside of us, supportive through school, through activities, through people that help us to strengthen our resiliency. And so that's green. We want to not just focus on yellow and red, but we want to in fact strengthen those protective factors that help promote resiliency within students. That ability to bounce back in the face of hard times and build upon one's strengths. Yellow are risk factors. And there are certain risk factors in society that are heightened during the pandemic. You know, our country has not experienced things like staying at home for long periods of time, working from home for long periods of time, reduced travel and not going out unless you need to or you must, or being cautious as you do all of those things. There's an isolation that is a part of what we've been dealing with, and that's something felt by children. It's something felt, and different people respond in different ways. So we have to be mindful that some of those yellow risk factors can be heightened during something like what we're dealing with right now. So that's important for us to know, and warning signs are red, and there's a number of specific warning signs tied to these models. But the important thing is, you don't have to know a model to know that if you see something, we want you to say something. We want students to tell a trusted adult at school, a trusted adult at home. We want parents to be open and willing to call us. We maintain confidentiality, but we can connect people to supports so that we can meet the individual needs of our students and families. One of the areas that I think is a good example of this has to do with extra and co-curricular activities. So there is much discussion over the last 8 months about, do you provide athletics? What about high-risk sports, or sports where the potential to transmit COVID-19 between people is at a greater level? Do you do that or you don't do that? So there are bodies like the CDC who would discourage or have concern about indoor sports in the winter, for example. But on balance, the continued discussion is, how do we weigh the benefits and risks of these types of activities in order to consider the whole child? That's an important and difficult part of this entire process. And so based upon the scope of that risk or the voluntary nature of certain activities, we're attempting to, and have attempted to, provide those options. In person if appropriate, virtually if we don't feel like we can manage it that way. But again, to the positive, we've had students involved in a number of things since the beginning of this year, and that has continued. We do put in place a health and safety plan. At times, individuals can be frustrated with certain components of a health and safety plan. But on balance, if that provides us with the confidence we can engage in that activity and do so as safely as possible, again, that has driven the recommendations we've had in place this year. Specific note for the students in the class of 2021 and their families. We think about you. We think about you all the time. We think about our kindergarten students. We think about specifically seniors in the class of 21. In a recent communication, we shared with the families and students in the class of 21 our commitment to some form of in-person commencement ceremony. We can't say with 100% certainty exactly what that will look like, but we are 100% certain we will make something work, and it'll look a lot like what you traditionally think about. How many total people are involved, that we can't say, but having that experience is something that's important. And then there's a whole lot of other things that are a part of the high school experience, part of the senior year experience, activities and events that are very important to children. Different for different students as they think about those, whatever that particular activity happens to be. But our high school administrative team is working and has been working with students to identify things that are appropriate but also can be managed effectively, and how do we find something We know this as parents, we know this as adults. We have a whole lot of ideas about what kids might like. Kids have a whole lot of ideas about what they do like. We have to find sort of the intersection between those to find out what can work in this type of environment. And again, engagement with parents is part of it. This is a picture of a bulletin board with all the seniors in the class of 21 pictured. Small things, but we believe important things that talk to the school climate and culture. So that essential question, when can we shift? Again, same question we had in October 5th, we have again tonight. When can we shift further left on the continuum towards 5-day in-person? That is fundamentally tied to reducing the physical distancing between students. You can't do one without the other. And we could maintain a teacher zone, but we cannot maintain 6 feet and increase the number of students in our other environments. So the answer we had in October is very similar to what we have here today, when it is safe and sustainable. And what do we mean by that? Conditions continue to improve and reach a point where we feel that's more viable, not just we think and feel, but the experts, the guidance that we receive both outside of the district and through our healthcare council. Our cases in our district remain low, and building closures have not become an impediment to that, and when we can shift the physical distancing as indicated here. So these are the answers to the questions. We are not doing nothing. We are, in fact, doing the opposite. We are on a daily basis monitoring every one of the details around our programming and what happens in the public health environment. When news media reports that the CDC may issue updated guidance to schools as early as Wednesday of this week, as soon as that information becomes available, I can assure our entire community, we are consuming it, we are reading it, we are understanding it, and we are asking questions if we don't understand it. And that is true of all the literature that comes out of our public health agencies. So we will continue to do so. We'll continue to use a resource that we feel incredibly fortunate to have, and those are the experts that are a part of our leadership council. We will continue to determine when is the appropriate time. We are hopeful. I am hopeful that we reach that place where we can shift further left on the continuum during the current school year. I'm hopeful for that, and we will use all of the decision thresholds to reach a point to understand that and determine what is next. But we are not, in our estimation, at that point today. And so we want to continue to actively monitor and then determine when, where, and how that move may be appropriate. We have increased our pool of candidates. So for clarity, prior to the start of the 2021 school year, we added over a dozen long-term substitutes to emphasize K-3 in-person education and further distribute students so we could maintain 6 feet of physical distancing in those environments. We're operating the Pine-Richland Virtual Academy, as the board is aware. We have over 20 day-to-day substitutes reporting to our schools every single day to help support operations. Every single day. And that has occurred from the beginning of the year through the present time. We have additional support that comes in depending on need on a given day, but we commit to at least that level of support every day. That includes an additional substitute school nurse and all sorts of other supports. We also have 15 members of our community, mostly parents or community residents, who were already independent volunteers. They've gone through a developed orientation program. They had the opportunity to do tours and visits to our schools. And as an additional support element in the delivery of schools, we have this volunteer workforce of independent volunteers. And that has started. It's sort of a last but one option as we've worked through a number of things. But we are incredibly appreciative of those 15 individuals who've said, yeah, I'll help out if I can help out. And when they do, they should know that we will hold their hand in a physically distanced, non-contact way until they're comfortable and give them all the tools and supports they need to feel good and hopefully come back. And then lastly, we're preparing for potential staff vaccination program. Educators are phase 1B. We are still in phase 1A. There is not supply of the vaccine to meet the numbers in each of those phases. There is an increasing call for educators in our country to receive the vaccine. At the same time, we have millions and millions of people who have other conditions or criteria that also make them of important risk. So it's a challenging circumstance. As it stands today, the intermediate unit does not have responsibility for this, but what the intermediate unit leadership has done is they've helped support school districts in Allegheny County by working with Allegheny County Health Department and with the major healthcare providers in our region. And so Pine-Richland should be assigned a liaison contact from one of those healthcare providers. We will work directly with that liaison to identify the specific plan for Pine-Richland. And again, I don't necessarily want to go into a lot of detail around vaccination opportunities at tonight's meeting, but how a staff of 513 would be vaccinated, in what phasing, what time between first dose and second dose, if it's a two-dose vaccine, and how to prepare for potential effects of that process and what does that look like. So these are all questions, but ultimately, to help ensure a systematic approach in the county, we should be assigned a liaison to one of the healthcare providers, and then we will work directly with them to map out a game plan. So when the time comes, we're able to effectively and efficiently move through that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Miller.
Do you want, I'd just like to say a few words because I am on the Healthcare Leadership Council. And to give you an idea of how it works, so we've had 12 meetings through Google Meets, and I've been to all 12 of those. Normally, Dr. Miller does a presentation, and that presentation actually is on the district website. It's posted after we have our meetings. And then it's 43 people, so it's a pretty big group, and so we do breakout sessions so that we can, enough people can ask questions, listen to the experts as they share information, give feedback, question and answer. And then, so the experts will share, research or their viewpoints, and there's usually some questions that are posed, like, the 6-foot distance, is it at, should we or could we decrease that or not? And they've been very firm on the 6-foot, keeping that 6-foot distance, just as the CDC and the Allegheny County Health Department and the PA Department of Health and so on all stress that. I actually have watched some of their meetings more recently, and they do talk about return to school, but they also talk about the mitigating, sticking with the big three, following those, and that is maintaining that 6-foot distance. Then the other members do speak, the staff speaks, the students speak, ask questions, or share viewpoints. And some of the feedback from the students was that they find the hybrid, that it is difficult going from hybrid to, in class, in person, and then the next day to be at home. But they would much rather than be virtual 100%, so they're really happy to be back. They're worried about that we may have to close down again. They want that stability that Dr. Miller had said. They do want that stability. And they don't want to have to quarantine for 2 weeks. If we decrease that distance to 3 feet, then anyone who is a close contact now has to be quarantined for 2 weeks, or maybe a whole classroom or a building, depending on if there's any spread. And so they really want that stability. And they also don't want to take anything home to families, the community, no spread. And the teachers do have concerns about increasing density in the classroom. If we put students too close together, they would get their 6 foot, but that still puts all the aerosols. That's part of the spread. It's not just the coughing and speaking and so on. It's also breathing that will spread. And the masking, as so long as the masks fit well, you can decrease that, but it does increase the chance of spread. So there's lots that is talked about and that's shared in the meetings, and I think, I also attended a meeting, our PTO presidents and principals, the meeting on Friday, and we've done, Mr. Lyons and I have done these meetings, and it was interesting the connections that are being made. One of the programs, this is just one of many programs that are out there trying to connect students, and one of those programs is a pen pal writing program between the students at Eden Hall and the high school. There's 65 high school students currently involved, and they're trying to get more, but they actually are handwriting letters to each other, and they're actually mailing them through the U.S. Postal Service, and to make those connections. And it's such a great idea for these students to have some support, give themselves some direction, some meaning. And the other theme of that meeting was hope and strength. And I think that we all need to be here for each other, helping to support through that. So, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Yeah, I know it's challenging, and thank you for outlining some of the challenges we face and the steps that are being taken to mitigate it. No doubt it's having an impact throughout the community. One of the things that you said that does stick with me still is that at each time we make a decision, we're constraining other decisions. So we can only move so far without having an impact on safety, for instance. In going back or reducing the 6-foot social distancing, we're reducing the opportunity for other children and families who want to go to school, even just hybrid, who aren't comfortable going that distance, and now they may feel compelled to go full virtual. So I won't say there aren't good choices. I think there are, and I think we're making them. But there are sacrifices along the way. But I'm glad to hear we continue to look at the data, continue to look at opportunities to increase engagement, reach out to students, and continue to evaluate the conditions and the recommendations of healthcare professionals. Any other questions or comments? We'll now move to our first recognition of visitors.
We do have 3 people who would like to speak to the board. Our first person is Mr. Joe Cassidy.
Hello?
Mr. Cassidy? Mr. Cassidy?
Hello?
Hi, you're with the board, so you can go ahead and speak.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Cassidy. You can go ahead and address
Yep.
the board at this time.
Hi, thank you. I was going to go in one direction, but actually we just received an email today regarding some changes that may be taking place in K through 3 school. And it seems to be we're taking a step backwards. I guess so many people want to start send their kids to school to the point of, I guess you guys feel that you can't socially distance well enough. So one of the options is we're going to keep one of the kids home per week while the rest go to school. I mean, obviously, you talk about mental health as a focus. It's obviously not. I mean, talk about isolating a 2nd grader from the rest of their friends, from the rest of the school. So, yeah, you have to stay home, but your 16 other friends who are in your class, they can go to school. That's not isolation at all, is it? And in regards to the cases at the school, how many of the cases were actually from exposure in the school? Do you guys have that number?
Mr. Cassidy, we'd like to have someone from the administration contact you about both those concerns.
I guess there's no answer on that one, but those were my points that I wanted to make.
Thank you. We will have someone follow up with you.
Okay, our next speaker will be Mr. John Corey. Hello? Mr. Corey?
Hello.
Mr. Corey, can you hear me?
Mr. Corey, you are on with the board. You can go ahead and address them.
Can you guys hear me?
We can, Mr. Corey.
Hi, this is John. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, thank you. My name is John Corey. I live at 306 North Wind Court. Can you guys hear me? He can, Mr. Corey. My name is John Corey. I live at 306 North Wind Court. I've been a resident of Pine-Richland for 20 years. I've also volunteered my entire adult life, and I appreciate your service to this community. I also run a business of 60 employees. I have constantly made decisions and changed protocols at work as new information has come available. I've spoken before the board in the past, but not in reference to our COVID protocols. I've listened to a lot of the board meetings this year, but not all of them. When we started back to school, I understood the plan presented because it followed social distancing the CDC was recommending. I also understood following the Allegheny County spread percentages, but I thought those numbers were way too tight and would not allow us to stay in school. Since the start of school, there have been numerous reports of increase in calls to crisis centers and, unfortunately, large increase in suicides nationally. Despite this, PR was closed for 7 weeks this winter. I think the challenges that we see nationally are reflected in our students. I think all students across the nation are struggling. Just so you know, I do not have a senior this year. Have any of you read the senior survey? If you did, it should be on the agenda tonight. It is clear evidence that a course correction needs to be made. In my opinion, should have been made a couple of months ago. I understand you are all volunteers, but you have chosen these roles and it is time to lead. I listened to the last board meeting. We spent a lot of time talking about diversity. There's nothing wrong with that, but we didn't spend any time talking about mental health, and that's disappointing. You hear Dr. Miller mention it tonight and focus on it, but I don't think we're giving it anywhere near the credence it deserves. It is incredibly dangerous, and it's very harmful to the students. I've heard a lot of talk on this board in the past about being a good community member. I'll remind you that your job is the well-being of all of these students, and the mental health aspect, just because of the incredible challenges that come from it, should be the most important focus we have right now. I also believe it's time to adjust our approach. I understand no one is interested in school board meetings until it affects them. I promise you there's a lot of interest in these school board meetings now. Good decision makers are constantly looking for good information to make decisions with. I'm asking you to talk about mental health and to use the senior survey and looking again at everything this district has taken away, especially extracurricular activities. I'm asking you to reassess the COVID model being used to ensure that we are focusing on the mental health of these students. I know there are districts around us who are offering more extracurriculars than we are. So I'm leaving you with these couple of questions. I understand that you'll get back to me in time. I look forward to your response. The first is, will you be discussing the senior survey? And second, will you talk about mental health and how it affects PR students? And will you be willing to reevaluate the COVID model that you are currently using with an emphasis on mental health? I appreciate taking the time to let me speak tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Corey.
Our last speaker is Mr. Joe Casario.
Hello, Mr. Casario.
Yes.
You're on with the board. They can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Joe Casario. I live at 334 McIntosh Drive. I've been a resident of Pine Township for over 20 years. I've had 2 children graduate from Pine-Richland High School, and I have 1 junior there now. And I just want to thank you for letting me speak tonight. First off, I'd like to say that I'm a physician. I've been a physician for over 25 years. Dr. Miller, you said that 40-some superintendents meet with the Allegheny Department of Health, and you meet regularly and very often. I have to question, are you sure that the Allegheny Department of Health is correct? I mean, we're starting from an assumption that this is the way to do it, and the assumption may be wrong. And when you start from a basis point that's wrong, every decision you make could be wrong. So I agree with Mr. Corey that I think a course correction needs to be held. And that may be one of the starting points. I ask myself, if someone, you said, Dr. Miller, that depending on what choice you make, someone may or may not feel better. And that's absolutely correct. And that's called choice. It's called freedom. We have the choice. If it doesn't make us feel good, we'll have to make a decision about that. If it makes us feel good, if we feel like this is what I want my children to be involved in, then we'll let them do it. If you make a decision about the school or when the kids are going to go back to school and we don't like it, we should have the choice to make that decision or not, to send our kids to school. And you said, to paraphrase, about opening up when it's safe and sustainable. What does that mean? What's the end point? Safe from what? Safe from positive tests? Safe from asymptomatic but positive students? Safe from symptomatic students, ill students, hospitalized patients, critically ill students, or worse? We need to figure out what we're trying to stay safe from. And if we're worried about the spread, which we should be, but we're going to have to realize that the spread is most likely never going to end. So we're going to have to figure out mitigation factors, like you said. If 6 feet is what's holding us back, maybe we should really look at changing 6 feet. If we can put up, if Giant Eagle can put up partitions at every checkout counter, we could too. Put them up. I echo Mr. Corey's beliefs that the mental health of our children is at stake. I think there are so many unintended consequences of, and I'll give you, I absolutely agree. In the beginning, we had to lock it up. We've had to figure out what's going on. We had to get data. We have data. The data tells us that children are in pretty good shape with this. And I think we have very good ways of protecting teachers, like you said. 500 people can get immunized pretty easily. 500 people can get N95 masks. 500 people can get P100 masks. We can protect people. We can protect students. We can protect teachers. But we can never take all risk out of life. There's no way we're ever going to do that. And the unintended consequences of trying to protect somebody from something is that you may be opening them up to something else. If we never opened the hospitals back up, if we restricted everybody from coming to a hospital, what would happen? The consequences would be horrendous. It would be devastating. And I think that's what, sadly, we're going to see in the future if we keep our children out of school. If we keep them from learning in a way that best serves most students. If we keep them in a way from not socializing and interacting and learning more than just what's 1 + 1. We need to do some things that may be outside the norm, that may not be what feels like the right thing to you right now. We're a year into this. We have to do things. And just because you're doing something, and I thank you all so much for volunteering your time and your effort, and I know you're thinking about it constantly, but just because we're doing something doesn't necessarily mean we're doing the right thing right now. And we have to constantly be looking and questioning, are we doing the right thing? Can we do something better? I thank you so much for giving me this time to speak, and good luck with all your decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Casario. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Ms. Hathorn, Student and staff recognition, please.
Thank you. Tonight, we start recognition at the high school where students are earning top awards in the 2021 Scholastic Art Awards program, including the American Vision's Best of Show Award, 8 Gold Key and 20 Silver Key Awards, and 31 Honorable Mention Awards for individual works. In all, students from 43 school districts enter the Western PA Regional Competition. You can see all of these awards at PineRichland.org. Also the teachers who help support the students, and also the images of the artwork. Students earning Best of Show Award and Gold Key Awards here at Pine-Richland will have their work judged at the national competition in New York. Congratulations to these students and their teachers, Ramon Riley, Vince Thero, and Marianne Andressi. A.W. Beatty Career Center is announcing Students of the Month for December and January. Senior Brianna Vadimo Williamson earned the honor for Health Science Technology, and sophomore Sean Snyder for Automotive Collision Technology. For October and November, sophomore Kira Zivanti is earned the honor for Health and Nursing Science, and sophomore Jeffrey Turney for HVAC Studies. So congratulations. Also, seniors Michael Alessi, Joshua Pazin, Charles Rudolph, and Victor Williams, and junior Miles Brown were selected under the direction of teacher Jeff Fico to compete among the top 64 teams in the 2021 International Public Policy Forum. This is the first and only contest that gives high school students around the world the opportunity to engage in written and oral debate on issues of public policy. This year's competition was highly competitive with more than 180 teams from around the world competing. The topic this year resolved the benefits of artificial intelligence outweighs the harm. So congratulations to those students. On January 25th, Northern Regional Police Department made 4th grader Cooper Nindle, who has been undergoing cancer treatment at St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, an honorary police officer. Northern Regional says Cooper is the first individual to be honored as an honorary police officer for the department. Officers heard about his battle and how tough and brave he is, so it is only fitting that he was named an honorary officer. Cooper took the oath as the police department Superintendent Brian Miller, Assistant Superintendent Kristen Justice, and Eden Hall Principal Stephen Smith watched and in support. So congratulations to Cooper. Pine-Richland High School varsity competition team will compete at the WPIAL competition on March 13th with hopes to qualify for the PIAs, which will be held in April. Also last week, the district hosted signing day. More information is available on the website for all of our athletes who will play collegiate sports in the fall. So thank you.
Can we add Dr. Kazilla to the staff recognition on that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And Dr. Kazilla earned her EDD, so congratulations if you're still on the line.
Thank you. Correspondence, Ms. Williams.
Thank you. Chris Bonneau emailed the board regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diane White emailed the board regarding Chromebooks. Following people emailed the board regarding return to school: Amy Turchik, Jennifer Neal, Lisa Harvey, Jane Gochis, Kylie Nelson, Kara Gabanowski, Carrie Wynn, Trish Gola, Don McWhorter, Wendy Peacock, Kimberly Hagmeyer, Melissa Nicely, Michelle and Ryan Strulek, Marianne Hayes, and Bonnie DeLuca.
Thank you. Item 1.06 is a motion to approve the meeting minutes as attached.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Miller, strategic plan update.
Thank you. Item 2.01 is our quarterly update of key initiatives, so you'll see a description of progress in each of those areas. Excuse me. We've also updated the website with our dashboard. So for all the initiatives, areas of focus this year, you can get an update if you go to the site and see how things are progressing. For item 2.02, This is really a concept placeholder. We have talked with our community and staff around what we're calling sort of a red star moment. So certain disruptions happen to different industries and sectors. COVID has obviously had an incredible impact on all aspects of society. It has had a significant impact on education. We are so much focused on day-to-day operations and trying to provide for students, it's hard to even contemplate that period of time when we will be out of COVID, but needing to understand what has the global pandemic meant for public schools, what will it mean for the future of educational programs and services, how must we think about sort of this moment and understand how and in what ways education will evolve and look differently post-COVID-19. So in the public comment, we see, or content section, we see sort of a description of this. To describe it, we often talk about some of the loops of incremental improvement. We've seen that effectively and successfully at Pine-Richland for years. This is different. This is something that is more of a springboard opportunity to really think about the future. And so as we think about that, we believe we will be in a position to have some changes in the way we go about education, even for the fall of '21. But we also think that down the line, in future years, there will be other realities of what has this meant to the way we operate, what augments based upon our experiences, and then where might we teach and learn differently in the future. So it's an exciting time. It's a challenging time to think in the future, but it is important that we begin to do that now so that we're positioned to do the right thing for our community, staff, and students.
Any questions or comments? You know, I got a pop-up ad I almost sent on my cell phone for a neighboring school district's virtual academy the other day. And I almost thought it was, oh, there's another XY school district popping up on this national website. But it's here, right? It's here, so. Finance, Mr. Kashani.
Yes, sir. Item 3.01 is a motion to approve the financial reports dated December 31st, 2020, and accounts payable dated February 8th, 2021, in the amount of $270,176.75, and paid accounts for January, February, in the amount of $2,954,081.31 as listed.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 3.02, motion to approve the budget transfers in the amount of $86,312 as attached.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 3.03, motion to approve the 2021-2022 AIU Program of Services budget as attached.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I'd like to thank the Finance Chair of the AIU Superintendent Advisory Council on my left. This is a flat budget. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 3.04 is an informational item that just mentions that because we received a Gaming Economic Development Fund grant in 2019, which was approved, we had to have that audited as well by our auditors that Dana reached out to. And essentially, it's no findings were found, and everything's cool. Item 3.05 is another informational item that we have our next Finance Committee meeting on March 1st. And let me think. I think we'll talk about the budget and capital funding plan.
Good topics, Mark.
Thanks.
Dr. Meyer.
Item 4.01 is an informational item. Pine-Richland School District has 9 departments in implementation phases of in-person program review, and I am going to let Dr. P or Dr. Justice address this.
I'll take that. Thank you. This is just an update for the board and community. So we are evaluating biology resources this year. We've completed the first 2 rounds of evaluations. At this point, we've narrowed it down to our top 2, and as we do typically, we like to open it up to community and students. So in years past, it was in this room, and we would have items on display, but we're still able to do that virtually. So students and parents during the week of the 22nd of February will have the opportunity to explore the top 2 resources that we've narrowed it down to, look at it through a student's eyes, through parents' eyes, and then give us some feedback. What's really cool is kids that are in biology right now will have an opportunity to review and give us feedback on those resources, and that will guide in our final recommendation. So we hope to have in March a recommendation to the board in terms of putting that final item on display for 30 days, and then that'll tie up our process for the year. There's a presentation included. We're not going to go through it, but it's there for if anyone wants a reference. It's just our entire evaluation process of textbook.
Thank you. Mr. DiTullio, Buildings and Grounds.
Item 5.01 is for action, a motion to approve the purchase of a public safety UHF BDA for Pine-Richland High School from Beercom at a cost of $56,651.71.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 6.02 is a motion to accept, in accordance with Board Policy 702, gifts and donations, and with sincere gratitude to the Hance Elementary PTO and Lowe's, a donation for an outdoor stage near the outdoor classroom valued at $319.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
It's an outdoor storage unit.
All those in favor say
What did I
yes.
say? I said stage, didn't
Right.
I?
Stage storage.
Well,
So
I was
just to
thinking
make
of
sure
the
we-
musical, sorry.
Right.
Just figuring that would be safe to do it outside, right?
Right.
The-
Good thought.
All those in favor say yes.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries with our gratitude.
And item 5.03 is an information item regarding the preventative testing of lead in the water, which we've been doing for a couple years now. And I don't know if we need to go into any more detail. Is that, Dana, is that you, or?
Yeah, just barely to say, we've done all of our, let me make sure this is on, all of our preventative testing, which far exceeds any expectations placed upon the district. We feel really good about sort of the system of testing we have going on, and this was, again, just to ensure that our schools are operating appropriately, and we just bring it to the board agenda so that we have it as a matter of public record.
And to my knowledge, everything has been clear on every test, so.
Yeah, when we did our initial water tests a couple of years ago, we had a couple of things to address that were not out of the norm but required remediation, and so we did that. But that's the benefit of this, process we have.
Good.
Thanks, Greg. Dr. Campbell.
Item 6.01 is a motion to establish the following meal prices for the 2021-2022 school year as presented. There will be a 5-cent increase to breakfast and a 10-cent increase to elementary lunch and secondary lunch, and everything else will remain the same.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 6.02 is a motion to approve trip requests to the PIAA State Championships for winter sports in the 2020-2021 school year as applicable per qualification.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 6.03 is a motion to approve the student attendance and application of the Student Discipline Code for the Air Force Junior ROTC students to travel to Parkersburg, West Virginia on Saturday, April 24th to participate in a drill meet as described in the attached field trip request form at no cost to the district.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I'll just chime in real quick. So we've talked to the teachers and the cadets about this, and with an understanding, you can see there in red, that we want to see this happen for them. It is a day trip. It's there and back. It is out of state. But understanding that conditions and cases will drive final recommendation of whether this happens. They understand that. They know that going in. If there's any cost associated with travel, there would not be lost to families. In fact, we would have to make modifications to this. But we thought it was appropriate to bring it forward. Hopefully we'll be able to participate.
Any questions? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 6.04 is an information item that the Spanish and French international trips for 2021 have been postponed till 2022.
So just to add real quickly with that, early on we've been working with the families that had reserved this opportunity and the travel agency, so they've been good with making some modifications for us. Families have a number of options here. Traveling this spring overseas is not an option, so that has been communicated. They have travel voucher options. They have refunds minus some loss. And then for our current seniors, they obviously have the same options for a travel voucher at any point beyond high school, and also having that refund minus the $500. For our current juniors that are not anticipating taking a world language next year, they are still eligible for participating in that trip if they're interested at this time. Hopefully next year where that would be moving forward. So typically students, that's reserved for students that are in one of those world language courses, but we hopefully have to provide more opportunities for them as well.
And the last item, 6.05, is another information item. The Student Services Committee was held prior to this meeting, and a redistricting update was provided.
Thanks, Ben. Staff Services, Dr. Mihalik.
Thank you. Item 7.01, Personnel, is a motion to approve the personnel and supplemental items as attached.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 7.02 is a motion to approve the second reading of Batch 600 finance policies as attached.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 7.03 is a motion to approve the second reading of Batch 700 property policies as attached.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I had one question on the crowdfunding policy. Why is there a 30-day window in that for, what's the reasoning behind that time length between requesting and it being approved or launched?
I'm just going to jump in to say that what we did was we structured it similar to the gifts, grants, donations policy. So we usually try to allow kind of a lead time in there so that an organization that would like to either donate or in this case go through the crowdfunding process, they would have to submit that proposal to us so that we would be able to provide a would be able to receive that, put that on the agenda, and be able to review that with you, prior to granting them the approval.
Okay.
Any other questions? All those in favor say yes.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 7.04 is a motion to approve the student practicum as presented.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Motion carries.
And motion 7.05 is an information item. A staff services committee meeting is scheduled for April 12th at 6 p.m. A hiring update will be provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Under board business, item 9.01 is a discussion information item. It's our first look at revisions to the zeros policies, which affect the board's organization and self-governance. We do have some policies that are really no change recommended from the review. Thank you to Christine Misbach and Barb Williams for working together with me on this. And we do have significant revisions to some of the other policies, especially around our organization and meetings. This has been circulated to the board prior to this, along with some commentary from Mr. Palmer. Thank you for weighing in. So I will open up the discussion to that with this brief preface that the intention in our organization around our committee organization is to reflect the practice that we've had for the past couple of years. And we understood that it drifted from where the policy was written, and we wanted to do that because it was how we were working best. And if it was something that we felt we should shift toward in a more permanent way, we would address that in policy. And that's what this policy does. It really emphasizes the participation of all board members at the committee levels and sort of gets away from that committee word into the idea of us meeting on specific subject matters. In terms of the meetings, these adjustments are really embracing some of the positives that we've seen over the past 9 months during COVID, which is the ability for greater participation of board members who may be traveling out of town or unable to attend a meeting in person. We get greater participation, less inconvenience for staff and administrators who can attend a meeting in the evening by dialing in. And overall, we want to enshrine that flexibility as much as allowed under school code. That's the intention. I'll throw it open for discussion at this point.
On 005, do we really need to be notified by mail? And I'm thinking into the future. I mean, really, we all know about it, about 16 different ways of communication before that. Do we need to be sending out more mail?
On the reorg?
Yes, I'm sorry, on the reorg. Organization meeting, first paragraph. Is that something legal?
Mr. Palmer's looking at that. It is, I'm almost certain we'll find out that it is, along with many other antiquated things that are in the Public School Code of 1949 or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
That's exactly.
Thank you.
Specifically required by the school code.
Updated from Pony Express, I assume.
Yeah. I mean, is there anything we can do about, I mean, just some of those things that are just so ancient that make no sense. I mean, we're having meetings, as Peter just talked about, we're having them virtually. I mean, we could be in Hawaii, I wish, but and having this meeting right now, yet I need to have Barb send me an invitation and then send me a letter. It just seems ridiculous.
Why couldn't we do electronic, if we opt in to receive electronic communications, like we do with bank statements, credit card statements, that would be legal.
Yeah, I think we could put together a letter and send it electronically that would comply with the code. We could do that rather than plunking it in the U.S. mail and getting it to you. But I think that
we want to have a letter that we can say was delivered to the board members. For some reason I can't think of, we were audited and asked, did we comply with the school code relative to delivery of that letter?
Yeah, I'm good with the letter, just the mail thing just seems,
As Dr. Miller noted, it is the school code of 1949, so.
I'm not that old, but there was a time when I served on this board when board members getting and acknowledging and responding to email could be an issue. So I say that not to make a joke, but in all seriousness. But I'm fine either way. You can leave it as a letter, but send it as you wish.
So just one comment on 005. This is the one that is talking about subject leads. And the only thought that I have on this is that there's not a lot of guidance on what constitutes a subject lead. And I don't know if, I mean, in some ways it's keeping it more flexible can be beneficial. That works for us. Future years, if the institutional memory for what this constitutes, if it's not preserved, could be a little bit vague for what that is. So that's the only thought that I had about that. A sentence in maybe outlining what the intent is to label something as a subject lead.
I think it's a great thought, and it's something actually we started working on for board officers. Barb has put together some stuff describing the role of the officers, and we can and should give some more thought in extending that. I don't know that it lives in policy is the right place, but it's absolutely something we can expand on in that same context of role of the board, and I think we have some work done there already, and we can share that more broadly and address specifically the committee heads or subject leads, as we call them.
Yeah, I would add something that nobody would ever know is that we have a 4 to 5 month onboarding process for new board members to the Pine-Richland School District. And so the fact that we have that, all of these types of things, however they may change or evolve, will then get embedded into the onboarding program so someone new understands the manner in which operations happen.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Palmer had made a couple of specific recommendations in addition to observations, so I do want to, I think.
No, I keep smiling because the one comment about the 2 flat tires.
The 2 flat tires.
For the 24-hour notice, and his comment was, well, 24 hours may not be enough, especially if there's an emergency that comes up, and it might be that it's only a half an hour before a meeting, whatever, but the 2 flat, what if like someone like the board president or Peter Lyons has 2 flat tires on his bike?
And we can leave that 24 hours notice to the extent we're making up our own policy. We can say 24 hours notice because for some of these meetings, logistically, that puts a burden on Ms. Williams, other administration, Mr. Stoberner, to pull that together. 24 hours is what you should do. It may and will happen, and by accepting you're coming in electronically, since this is not school code, we can just by our practice, look past our own policy. So I don't think it would prevent us if we left it at 24 as a practice, because I do want you to give notice when possible. Hybrid is, all online is easy, and I love it. All in person, and we're all in, I love it. Hybrid, it's the best of both worlds, but it is the hardest one, and there's an immense amount of work going on back there. Sean pulling the strings and the levers. Thank you. Ms. Williams bringing all those logistics together. So, it's challenging, but to the extent all of this is focused on your engagement. So if it helps us be engaged and informed, then yeah, I'm in favor. All right, any other thoughts or comments? All All right, this will be on the agenda for voting with a couple of tweaks, which will be in the red lines for the March 1st planning meeting. Item 9.02 is a reminder of joint committees meetings on March 15th, 2021 on transition and transformation. So refer to that teaser Dr. Miller threw out there, the Red Star moment. And on May 17th, 2021, joint committees meeting on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Item 9.03 is a reminder to the board members and administration that we have a workshop scheduled for February 15th from 5:30 to 7:30 with topics to include regulatory updates, sunshine law, professional development, a safety update, and the transformation education topic. This is not a voting or deliberative meeting. Item 10.01 is reports. Ms. Mizvecchio.
Yes, so Prof had a board meeting on January 24th, and Andy Duggar, high school teacher, has been appointed as the secondary staff liaison to Prof. So that was his first meeting. So he will help to represent the staff as far as the grants and whether it's ideas or just input or whatever. So he's a great guy, so great teacher. And then they are also looking for a primary staff liaison as well. They just haven't identified anybody right now. And then Dana, Ms. Kirk, she presented to the trustees on budget awareness and future-focused financial planning. That was really nice. Nice job, Dana. And then the grants, they actually approved a grant for Hants Elementary called the Fab Lab. It's a, Dr. Justice, if you would like to speak to that, that would be great. It was for $14,728. And I know that Dr. Kozilla did mention that Ms. Lunt, Deb Lunt, the executive director, had been meeting or had met with her and was already going through the list of items that were asked for this Fab Lab. So take it away.
There's a whole building committee that they've been engaged in identifying items that would be helpful to build on the engineering design and just STEM experiences that Hants Elementary could have, since Richland and Wexford have both had either a makerspace or a STEAM area in their schools. So this was in part, consistency in our delivery of opportunities to students, but also the staff was extremely excited to think through what types of technologies and experiences the kids could have. So they're looking at things like B-bots, Ozbots, Qblets. They have pencils, basically like styli to use with the iPads. Kids Connects, a 3D printer. So a lot of it is going to build on the work that they've had from the outdoor classroom as well, to take some of those ideas, build it in, and make it accessible. So they've taken a room and kind of transformed it in preparation for what will be a big launch next year with these items. We're extremely thankful and appreciative to Prof for funding that idea and that dream.
Yeah, it's nice because they partnered with the Hants PTO as well for collaborative tables and chairs. And then Prof did last year their outdoor, the pavilion that they have.
The pavilion that the kids have been using actually came at a perfect time because when we were able to get outside a little bit for instruction, even during the hybrid, the kids would go out with classes to make use of that
Right.
outdoor space. So
And I think there was some PTO money as well.
Very collaboratively
Yeah.
all together.
And then also, thank you, Dr. Justice. And then also, the scholarship window will be opening March 1st, so a little less than a month away for graduating seniors. There will be 24 unique scholarships. They are listed on the Prof website, and the link is there. The total approximately is about $38,000, thanks to the generosity of community members and organizations. And then the deadline for that is April 9th, but it will be opening on March 1st, so we get started. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. I have just two brief updates in the IU. Dr. Miller had already mentioned the work that Dr. Scheer is doing to coordinate delivery of vaccinations for teachers in our member districts, which is very important. And secondly, just a mention of one of our programs, Waterfront Learning, just for the board's awareness. which is the online learning curriculum and program that the IU has run for a number of years. The work that's being done there, the demand for support from other districts is tremendous, including some of our neighboring districts who rely on it, districts that may not have the ability or capabilities in-house to develop online curriculum, refer to it, and that's one of the areas that the IU provides support, especially right now during so much remote learning. Dr. Miller?
Yeah, I wanted to make mention of Dr. Paxton. She's our lead psychologist. She's here today, so I wanted to thank her for being present. She's a member of the Healthcare Leadership Council. She is a veteran member of the district. She has been around for a long time. The reason I wanted to bring her up, as I mentioned around mental health earlier, she is recognized in this region. She is recognized in the state. She is one of the foremost experts on mental health, adolescents, and schools. She is deeply embedded into the actual day-to-day operations of what we do and how we do it. She has been here as we have evaluated each and every part of our social and emotional programming at Pine-Richland, how we provide supports. What is in place in Pine-Richland in 2021 and what was in place in Pine-Richland even 10 years ago are light years different as we have grown in our understanding and as we make access to services available to our families. There are so many examples, it would be hard to list them all, but a key part of that is her leadership as lead psychologist. She oversees, in our structure now, the entire K-12 program, and that includes things such as monthly updates to our leadership team at the senior level, and dedicated in the building parts of our pupil services and other support systems. So again, she spent her night here. I just want to say thank you for being here. She is a name that's on a lot of communications that go out around mental health and pupil services. The website and resources available for our families and what is here and a part of it is significant, and that is in part to her leadership and expertise. So thank you for being here. And again, for those families who have needs for services, she's accessible via email, responsive to needs, and prioritizes our children and families as her top priority. So thank you, Dr. P. And again, thank you, Mr. Lyons.
Any other reports from board members or administration?
Just one, I think, again, positive. Tonight is the first official practice for a musical. So again, that's an example of finding ways, even through this hybrid model, to bring kids into the school. It's going to look different. Obviously, practices and rehearsals will be different than they've ever been before. But both at the middle school and the high school, we're finding ways to bring kids back in and make that happen. So approval for doing things virtually in the past have been obviously in an auditorium. But again, another example on top of athletics, that extracurricular and things like musical and other after-school activities, we're making those things happen.
And am I correct that those are all going to be basically a video link online, nothing in person?
That's accurate, yes.
Is there any thought or any consideration, because there's a big difference, football can talk about this, band can talk about this, everyone can talk about this, between doing what you do in isolation and also doing it in front of live people. It would be great if there'd be an opportunity for at least parents and family, close family, maybe 2 per, to be able to see one of those live shows. It would be great for the kids. It would be great for the families as well. It's an effort that I personally would like to see pushed. At least, can we do it? Look into it, because I think when we talk about the mental health and everything, there's a big difference between putting something on a video, in difference from doing it in person with a live interactive audience.
Yeah,
So.
we don't disagree. Again, right now with some of those capacity limits, that's something that we're thinking about in terms of availability of space in the auditorium. But we are already talking about other options as we get into the spring and nicer weather, and what could we do I don't want to make any promises, but we are looking for ways to engage face-to-face as much as we can. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. B. Any others? Ms. Williams, do we have any visitors in the waiting room?
We do not.
Thank you. With that, we'll move to adjourn the meeting to an executive session to discuss real estate and personnel matters. Have a good evening, everyone.
Okay, we'll stay right here. Yeah, we'll stay here. And then, thanks, Mara. Yeah,